The 28th Flash. This flash comprises some of the short pieces I wrote as consolation for my brothers who were in the ward opposite me in Eskishehir Prison. At a time I was forbidden to mix with them or speak with them. An amusing and absorbing conversation with Süleyman Rüshtü, famous for his fidelity and distinguished by his sincerity of heart. Footnote number 1. Süleyman Rüshtü Çakin, 1899 to 1974. He was born in Isparta, where he was the director of the Tax Assessment Office. He became one of Bediuzzaman's close students and was imprisoned together with him in Eskishehir and Denizli. It was autumn, and approaching the time flies are discharged from their duties. And because of their minor annoyance, selfish humans were employing chemicals in my prison cell in order to eliminate them. It aroused a sharp pity in me. There was a washing line in my cell. However, in order to thwart the humans, the flies multiplied even more. In the evening, those miniature birds would be lined up in most orderly fashion on the line. When he wanted to hang up the washing, I said to Rüshtü, "Don't disturb those little birds, hang it somewhere else." To which he replied, completely seriously, "We need the line, let the flies find somewhere else for themselves." Anyhow, in the early morning, a discussion started up in connection with this exchange about the very numerous small creatures like flies and ants. I said the following to him: "The species whose copies are thus numerous have important duties and great value. Like the copies of a book are multiplied in relation to the book's importance. That is to say, the species of flies have important duties and great value, so that the all-wise Creator has greatly multiplied those tiny missives of divine determining and copies of the words of divine power. The all-wise Quran states, 'O men, here is a parable set forth, listen to it. Those on whom you call besides Allah cannot create even a fly if they all met together for the purpose. And if the fly should snatch away anything from them, they would have no power to release it from the fly. Feeble are those who petition and those whom they petition.'" Quran, Surah 22, verse 73. That is to say, if those things claimed to be gods by the people of misguidance were to gather together all causes and false gods apart from Allah Almighty, they would be unable to create even a fly. That is, the creation of a fly is such a dominical miracle and clear sign to the act of creation that even if all causes were to assemble, they would be unable to make anything like it or duplicate it, and would be unable to dispute that dominical sign. Flies, the significant subject of the above verse, defeated Nimrod, and when Moses, peace be upon him, complained about their bothering him, saying, "O my sustainer, why have you made these irritating creatures so very numerous?" The following answer came to him by way of inspiration: "You have objected about the flies once, while the flies have asked many times, 'O our sustainer, this man has a huge head, yet he praises you with only one tongue. And sometimes he neglects to do that. If you had created us out of only his head, there would have been creatures like us praising you with thousands of tongues.' Moreover, the flies which thus defended the wisdom in their creation against Moses' complaint, sufficiently powerful to withstand 1,000 objections, also pursue great cleanliness. These insects continually wash their faces, eyes, and wings, as though taking ablutions, and have important duties. The common view is short-sighted. It is still unable to comprehend those duties. Indeed, Almighty Allah has created an orderly group of carnivorous beings as public health officials of a sort. They cleanse the seas by gathering up the corpses of other sea creatures that die every day in their millions, and prevent the sea from becoming polluted and disgusting with their corpses. Footnote number 3. One fish produces thousands of eggs and thousands of young. Therefore, so that the equilibrium with the seas is maintained. Sometimes from the number of young fish, hatching from a roe consisting of 1,000,000 eggs, those that survive will equal the fish that die. Furthermore, it is a manifestation of divine compassion that because of the great difference in size between the mother fish and her young, she is unable to superintend them. She cannot enter the places they hide, and so the all-wise and compassionate one who promotes from among the young one to be their supervisor, and employs that tiny creature in the duties of the mother. If those public health officials of the sea did not carry out their extremely regular duties, the sea would not sparkle like a mirror. It would rather display a sad and touching turbidity. Also, Almighty Allah has created carnivorous and carrion-eating birds and wild animals to be like cleansing and public health officials, which collect the corpses of the wild animals and birds that die every day in their millions, cleanse the face of the earth of those putrid remains, and save other animate beings from such sad and touching sights. Some, like eagles, for example, through a divine impulse, wonderfully perceive the location of a corpse from a distance of 5 or 6 hours, though hidden and distant, and hasten to remove it. If these health officials of the land were not extremely efficient and orderly in carrying out their official duties, the face of the earth would take on the form fit to make all weep. The illicit food of carnivorous animals is the flesh of dead animals. The flesh of living animals is unlawful for them. If they eat it, they receive punishment. The hadith which states, "Retaliation shall be made for the hornless sheep on the horned on resurrection day," points out that although their bodies perish, among animals whose spirits are immortal, there is reward and punishment in a manner appropriate for them in an eternal realm. In consequence of this, it may be said that the flesh of live animals is unlawful for wild animals. Furthermore, ants are employed as cleansing officials to collect the corpses of tiny creatures and small particles and fragments of bounty, and they are given duties as public health officials to preserve tiny particles of divine bounty from waste, from being trodden underfoot and contempt and futility, and to gather up the corpses of other small creatures. In just the same way, flies are charged with duties of cleaning away poisonous substances and microbes which breed disease and are invisible to the human eye. They do not transmit microbes. On the contrary, through sucking up and imbibing harmful microbes, they destroy them and cause them to be transformed into a different state. They prevent the spread of many contagious diseases, a sign that they are both health workers and cleansing officials and chemists, and that they exhibit extensive wisdom is the fact that they are extremely numerous, for valuable and beneficial things are multiplied. Footnote number 4. How beautifully and subtly the following lines by the celebrated Yunus Emre allude to the wonderful works of dominical art that are the fly's wings and body. I loaded a single fly's wing onto 40 ox carts. 40 of them could not haul it. It remained thus decreed. O you self-centered human being, apart from the thousands of instances of wisdom in creation of flies, consider the following small benefit that concerns you and leave off your hostility towards them. For just as they offer you some familiarity in your exile, solitude and loneliness, so do they also warn you against sliding into heedlessness and your thought wandering. You see flies that, through their delicate manner and their washing their faces and eyes as though taking ablutions, are giving you a lesson and reminding you of human duties like action and cleanliness. Moreover, bees, which may be thought of as sort of a fly, give you honey to eat, which is the sweetest, most delicate bounties. And since, as it is stated by the Quran of Miraculous Exposition, they have been distinguished by receiving divine inspiration to be hostile towards them, while they should be loved indeed to be hostile towards creatures that suffer all sorts of difficulties, in thus hastening in friendship to assist man, is wrongful and unjust. We may combat harmful creatures only to repel their harm. We fight wolves to protect sheep from their attack, for example. Mosquitoes and fleas fall upon the turbid blood flowing in the veins polluted by harmful substances. Indeed, they are charged with consuming the polluted blood. So in hot weather, when there is blood surplus to the body's needs, why should they not be natural cuppers? It is possible. Glory be to him at whose art the mind is bewildered. At one time, while I was struggling with my evil commanding soul, imagining the bounties which it saw in itself to be its own property, my soul became conceited, proud and boastful. I said to it, "This property is not yours, it is in trust." So then the soul gave up its conceit and pride, but became lazy. It said, "Why should I bother about someone who is not mine? Let him perish, what is it to me?" Suddenly I saw that a fly had alighted on my hand and had started to thoroughly clean its eyes, face and wings, which were in trust from Allah. The fly was washing itself just like a soldier cleans his rifle and uniform thoroughly, which belonged to the state. I said to my soul, "You look at that." It looked and learned a good lesson. As for the fly, it became my conceited and lazy soul's teacher and instructor. Fly excretion is not harmful medically. In fact, sometimes it is sweet syrup. For it is not distant from dominical wisdom. It is indeed a function of that wisdom that flies contain thousands of different harmful substances, microbes and poisons, through what they have eaten. They are like tiny transforming and purifying machines. Apart from bees, there are other tiny species of flying insects that eat various putrid substances and then continuously excrete droplets of syrup in place of the filth. Footnote number 5. At the end of spring, there is one species of small fly which is created in the form of a black mass that becomes stuck to the branches of almond and wild apricot trees and remains there in the place of waste matter. Droplets continuously flow from the flies. These drops are like honey, and other species of flies gather round them to suck them up. Yet another species are employed in the pollination of the flowers and plants, and some trees, like the fig, just as the firefly, which is a sort of fly that flashes, sparkles, and is luminous, is worthy of observation. So do not other species that are gilded and glisten like gold deserve notice? Also, we must not forget flies armed with lances and wild bees, which are like brigands. If the all-merciful Creator had not pulled in their reins, if they attacked human beings like fleas, in the same way that those armed species killed Nimrod, so would they have also assailed the human race and expounded the implicit meaning of the verse. And if the fly should snatch anything away from them, thus the 100 famous species of flies, like those bearing special qualities, are given great importance, so that this mighty verse makes them its subject. O men, here is a parable set forth, listen to it. Those on whom you call besides Allah cannot create even a fly, if they all met together for the purpose. And if the fly should snatch anything away from them, they would have no power to release it from the fly. Feeble are those who petition, and those whom they petition. Transforming those rotten, poisonous substances into sweet and healing syrup, like the confection of divine power that rains onto the leaves of trees. They prove that they are machines for transmuting one substance into another. They demonstrate before the eyes what a mighty nation and group are those tiny individuals. Through the tongues of their beings they say, "Do not look at our smallness. Consider the vastness of our species and declare, all glory be to Allah." In the name of Allah, the Merciful, the Compassionate. Verily, when He intends a thing, His command is be, and it is. Quran Surah 36, verse 82. As this verse indicates, creation is through a command. The treasuries of divine power are the Kaf and Nun. Footnote number 2. The two letters of the Arabic alphabet in the word kun, that is be. Several of the many aspects of this subtle mystery have been mentioned in various places of the Risale-i. Here, in order to make more comprehensible in this century's materialist view, hadiths about the characteristics, qualities and material effects of the Quran's letters, and particularly the disjointed letters at the start of some surahs, we shall illustrate this mystery with a material example. The All-Glorious One, the owner of the sublime throne, has 4 thrones by which he directs the creatures on the earth, which is like a centre of the world and heart and Qibla of the universe. One is the throne of preservation and life, which is earth. This is the manifestation of the divine names of Preserver and Giver of life. The second throne is the throne of bounty and mercy, which is the element of water. The third is the throne of knowledge and wisdom, which is the element of light. The fourth is the throne of will and command, which is the element of air. We see with our own eyes that from simple earth the minerals and innumerable various plants are formed, through which are met the innumerable needs of animals and human beings, boundless multiplicity from unity with perfect order, an infinite variety of species from a simple element, innumerable regular embroideries on a plain page. And while water, and especially the sperm of animals, is a simple fluid like water, innumerable miracles of art become manifest through it in the many varieties of animate creatures. This shows that similarly to these two thrones, despite their simple nature, light and air are the places of manifestation of the wondrous miracles of the pen of knowledge, command, and will of the pre-eternal inscriber, the all-knowing one of glory. For now, we shall leave aside the element of light, and in connection with our question here, try to unveil a little the wonders and marvels of command and will within the element of air, which is for the globe of the earth the throne of divine command and will. With the air in our mouths, we sow letters and words, which at once sprout and send forth shoots. That is to say, in an instant, in no time at all, a word becomes a seed in the air, sprouting in the surrounding air. It produces the shoots of innumerable instances of the same word, great and small, in the air all around. We consider the element of air, and we see that it is so obedient and subjugated to the command of be, and it is, that it is as if, like a soldier in a regular army, each of its particles is all the time awaiting its orders, demonstrating its compliance with a submission to commands manifested from the command of be, arriving instantaneously from another particle far off. For example, the fact that human speech may be heard in any place whatever in the air by means of radio transmitters and receivers, on condition there is a receiver everywhere on the earth at the same moment, instantaneously demonstrates how perfectly each particle of air obediently conforms to the manifestation of the command be, and it is. In respect of the sacredness and in accordance with this mystery of compliance, the letters which have an unstable existence in the air may manifest many external effects and material qualities. Innumerable signs like these show that, since letters, which are the beings of the air, and specially sacred and Quranic letters, and in particular the letters of the divine ciphers at the beginning of some surahs, are well ordered and infinitely sensitive, and, as though listening to the instantaneous commands and acting accordingly, they surely make the particles of air submit to their material qualities and wondrous properties, which reflect the manifestation of the command be, and it is, and of pre-eternal will. It is in consequence of this mystery that sometimes the Quran of miraculous exposition describes the works of divine power as though they proceed from the attributes of will and speech, meaning that, apart from utter speed of creation, submission of things, and subjugation of beings, they govern like power. That is to say, the letters proceeding from the creative command govern in existence of beings like physical force, and the creative command is manifested identically with power and will. Yes, the works of will and the creative command appear to be identical with power in beings of this sort, whose physical existence is invisible, like air, which is semi-material and semi-immaterial. Indeed, they are identical with power. It is as though the Quran of miraculous exposition decrees, "Verily, when he intends a thing, his command is be, and it is," in order to attract attention to beings which are an isthmus between the material and the immaterial. It is thus in keeping with the sacred letters of the divine ciphers like Ha, Mim, Ta, Sin, Aleph, La, Mim, that they should each be switches among the particles of air for causing the wires of the hidden, subtle relations to vibrate and so be the means of the immaterial sacred wireless and telecommunications between earth and divine throne, it is entirely reasonable that this should be their function. In addition to the duties of each and every particle of air spread through all parts of the world, conforming to the commands in connection with such things as wireless, radios, telephones and telegraphs, and acting as receivers and conductors of subtle forces such as electricity, I conjectured and observed even a further duty in the blossom of my almond tree. The state the tree acquired through the touch of the air in the blowing breeze, with its particles like receivers conforming to the same command at the same instant, and all the trees on the face of the earth like a disciplined army, afforded me a conviction as certain as 2 + 2 = 4. That is to say, the air is a swift and agile servant on the face of the earth, tending the guests of the most merciful and compassionate one, resembling radio and telephone receivers and soldiers under orders. All its particles deliver the sacred commands of the most merciful one to the plants and animals. At the command of be, and it is, they carry out numerous orderly duties like being fans for those creatures, aiding their respiration. That is, after performing the duty of purifying the blood, the water of life, and kindling their bodily heat, the fire of life, they emerge from them and are the means of forming words in their mouths. It is as a consequence of this quality of the air that when letters, the beings of the air, acquire sacredness, that is, when they take up the position of being receivers, that is, they take up the position of receivers because they are the letters of the Quran, and become like switches, and even more so when the letters at the start of some surahs become like the sensitive central switches of those hidden relations, as their existences in the air possess this quality. So do their existences in the mind, and even as inscriptions have a share in it. That is to say, like physical medicines, healing cures, and other aims may be achieved through reading and writing those letters. In the name of Allah, the Merciful, the Compassionate. Say, if the ocean were ink wherewith to write out the words of my Sustainer, sooner would the ocean be exhausted than would the words of my Sustainer, even if we added another ocean like it for its aid. Quran, Surah 18, verse 109. This mighty verse is a vast, elevated, broad ocean. One would have to write a large volume in order to describe all its jewels. So postponing those precious jewels to another time, for now I shall explain a few rays of a subtle point in order to recall those truths. Appearing faintly to me, they struck my attention a few days ago during the Tesbihat recited following the 5 daily prayers, which is an important time for me. I did not write them down at the time, and they gradually grew fainter. So in order to hunt down a manifestation of those points before they are lost altogether, I shall say a few words as though encircling them. First word. In respect of being a divine attribute like knowledge and power, pre-eternal speech is also infinite. Certainly, if the seas were ink for something infinite, they would never be able to complete them. Second word. The clearest and most powerful thing that makes understood someone's existence is his speech. To hear someone's speech proves his existence as clearly 1,000 proofs. Indeed, as clearly as seeing him. Thus, through its elusive meaning, this verse says, if the seas were ink to the extent of divine speech, which demonstrates the all-glorious Sustainer's existence, and the trees were pens, and they were to write his speech, they would never come to the end of them. That is to say, just as any speech points to its own extent at the degree of witnessing to the existence of the one who spoke it, so the extent that the above speech points to and tells of the one who spoke it, the single and eternally besought one, is beyond measure, so that if all the seas were ink, they would still be insufficient for writing it. Third word. In accordance with the wisdom of establishing, verifying, and convincing of truth, in teaching the truths of belief to all classes of men, the Quran of miraculous exposition apparently repeats the same truth, This verse is in effect an answer to the entirely unjustifiable attacks of the Jewish scholars, who were the learned people of the book at that time, on the illustrious prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. Concerning this, in the face of his unlettered and not being learned, it is as follows. The verse says, "Their repetition in different and miraculous ways for numerous instances of wisdom, like verification and persuasion of a truth containing numerous benefits and results, and in order to establish them in the hearts of the mass people in particular. The repetition of matters like the pillars of belief, comprising thousands of truths, each of which has the value of thousands, does not arise from restricted speech or intellectual deficiency or lack of capital. Indeed, the Quran is taken from the endless, infinite, pre-eternal treasury of divine speech, and being turned to the manifest world on account of the world of the unseen, speaks with man and jinn, spirits and the angels, resounding in the ears of every individual. If the seas were ink, sentient beings scribes, plants pens, and particles the pen's nibs for counting the words of pre-eternal speech, the source of the Quran, they would still never come to an end of them, for they are finite, while divine speech is infinite." Fourth word. It is clear that the issuing of speech from something unexpected increases the speech's effectiveness, making itself heeded, especially the speech-like voices of large bodies like clouds and the atmosphere. They make everyone listen to them. The sounds of a gramophone, the size of a mountain, would attract attention even more, while the heavenly voice of the Quran, which takes the levels of the heavens as gramophone records, issues forth to make the head of the globe of the earth listen to it. Also, through the power of the radio, the molecules of air are like receivers and transmitters of its letters, alluding to the fact that the air molecules each become mirrors, tongues, needle points, and ears to the all-wise Quran's letters, and indicating how important, valuable, significant, and living are those letters. The elusive meaning of the verse says, "The Quran, which is divine speech, is so living and valuable that if all the seas were to become ink, and the angels scribes, and minute particles points, and plants and hairs pens to the number of the ears that listen to it and hear it, and to the number of the sacred words that enter those ears, they could still never come to the end of them." No, they could never come to the end of them, because if Almighty Allah multiplies man's weak and lifeless speech millions of times in the air, for sure, each word of the speech of that peerless sovereign of the heavens and the earth, which looks to all the earth and the heavens and addresses all conscious beings in the air and heavens, will comprise words to the numbers of particles of air. Fifth word. This consists of two letters. The first letter, just as the divine attribute of speech has words, so also does power have embodied words, and knowledge, too, has wise words of divine determining. These consist of all beings, living beings, and small creatures in particular, are each dominical words which point to the pre-eternal speaker in a way more powerful than speech. And if the seas were ink, they could never come to the end of them. That is, the verse looks to this meaning too in elusive fashion. The second letter. All the inspiration received by angels and men, and even by animals, are divine speech of a sort. The words of this speech are certainly infinite. It means that the verse is telling us how numerous and infinite are the inspirations and words of divine command, which the innumerable cohorts of absolute sovereignty continually receive. The knowledge is with Allah alone. None knows the unseen save Allah. In the name of Allah, the Merciful, the Compassionate. And we sent down iron, which is material for mighty war, as well as many benefits for mankind. Quran Surah 57, verse 25. A brief reply to a question about the above verse, which has come to have great importance, for with it a prominent person with knowledge of modern science silenced a number of Hodges. Question. It is normally said that iron is mined from the earth. So why is it said this verse we sent down, or revealed, rather than we excavated or extracted. This appears to be inappropriate. The answer. With the phrase, we sent down, the Quran of miraculous exposition recalls the vast and important bounty in iron. For it does not consider iron only for itself, so that it should say extracted. It rather recalls the tremendous divine bounty in iron, and how needy mankind is for it. Its aspect of being bounty does not come upwards from below, but down from the treasury of mercy. The treasury of mercy is certainly elevated above and at a high level. So the bounty descends from above, and needy mankind's level is surely below. The bestowal of bounty is superior to need, so the correct way to express the fact that bounty comes from the treasury of mercy to meet mankind's needs is, we sent down. It is not, we extracted. Also, since the gradual extraction of iron is at man's hand, the word extract does not alert a heedless person to its aspects of bounty. If what is meant is iron's material substance, it is extracted in respect to its physical situation. But iron's quality of being a bounty, which is the intended meaning here, is immaterial. This meaning looks not to physical situation, but to immaterial degree or level. Bounties proceeding from the treasury of mercy, which is a manifestation of the infinitely exalted degree of the most merciful, are certainly sent down from the highest level to the lowest. Thus, the correct expression is, we sent down. It recalls to mankind that iron is one of the greatest of divine bounties. Yes, the source of all mankind's industries, and of its advancement and progress, and the means of its power and strength is iron. So in order to call to mind this tremendous bounty and bestowal of favour, in lofty style the Quran states, and we sent down iron, which is material for mighty war, as well as many benefits for mankind. In the same way that it declares about David's important miracle, and we made the iron soft for him, Quran Surah 34, verse 10. That is to say, it points out that the softening of iron, a great miracle and great bounty for a great prophet. Secondly, above and below are relative. They are above and below in relation to the earth's centre. In fact, something which is below in relation to us is above from the point of view of the American continent. This means the situation of substances coming from the earth's centre to its surface changes according to the position of peoples on the surface. With the tongue of miraculousness, the Quran of miraculous exposition states that iron contains so many benefits and such extensive uses that it is not some common substance to be extracted from the store of the globe, and that it is not some natural substance to be used to meet any chance need. Rather, in order to express iron's general uses, it states that it is a bounty stored up by the Creator of the universe in the treasury of mercy and huge workshop of the universe, which he sent down through his majestic title of sustainer of the heavens and earth, to meet the needs of the earth's inhabitants. It is as if, like rain, heat, and light, which descend from the skies, it contains such all-embracing benefits that it was sent from the workshop of the universe, not from the narrow store of the earth. It was sent, having been prepared in the great treasury of mercy in the palace of the universe, and situated in the store of the globe, from which it is extracted little by little over the centuries in proportion to need. The Quran of mighty stature does not want to express the iron which is extracted bit by bit from this tiny store only as being utilised, but as being sent down together with the globe of earth from the supreme treasury as a tremendous bounty. That is to say, the thing most necessary for the house of the earth is iron. For when the all-glorious Creator separated the earth from the sun and sent it down for mankind, he sent down iron together with it, and met most of mankind's needs with it. The all-wise Quran decrees in miraculous fashion, use this iron in your works and try to excavate it and take advantage of it. The verse describes two bounties, both the repulsion of enemies and the attraction of benefits. Iron was put to important uses before the revelation of the Quran, but with the phrase, in which is material for mighty war. Quran Surah 57, verse 25. It points out that in the future, being used for travelling through the sea, air and land, iron would subjugate the globe in wondrous and astonishing fashion, and demonstrate a wondrous death-tainted strength. Thus, of its various sorts of miraculousness, it displays a flash of miraculousness predicting the future. While discussing the above point, the subject of Solomon's hoopoe came up. A persistent questioner from among our brothers asked, "What is the reason for the hoopoe describing the Almighty Allah with a relatively insignificant attribute in the sentence? Who brings to us light what is hidden in the heavens and the earth, while there are more significant divine attributes?" Footnote number 4. This refers to Refet, who is diligent in asking questions, but lazy when it comes to writing. The answer. One aspect of eloquence is to make understood the occupation or craft with which the speaker is mostly employed. Like the nomad diviners who through their intention wondrously discover the places where water was found in the Arabian Peninsula as a diviner from among birds and animals. Solomon's hoopoe was a blessed bird, employed in various duties, who also found water for Solomon, peace be upon him, so it could be used. It is stating, through the measure of its own art, that Almighty Allah proves his fitness to be worshipped and prostrated before by making known the things hidden in the heavens and the earth. Yes, the hoopoe saw it very well, for the natural inclination of the incalculable numbers of seeds and minerals under the earth is not to emerge upwards from below, because since beings lack life and will, they cannot go upwards of their own accord, on their own. They can only tumble downwards, particularly a body concealed under the heaviness of earth. It certainly could not shake that heavy load off its shoulders on its own and emerge upwards. It means that it does so through a wondrous power. The hoopoe understood through its divining this most hidden and important of the proofs of divine fitness to be worshipped, so that the all-wise Quran imparted a miraculousness to its statement concerning it. In the name of Allah, the Merciful, the Compassionate. And he sent down for you 8 head of cattle in pairs. He makes you in the wombs of your mothers in stages, one after the other. Quran, Surah 39, verse 6. This verse comprises the same point we explained in the discussion of the verse, and we sent down iron. Quran, Surah 57, verse 25. It corroborates it, and is corroborated by it. By saying in the Surah Al-Zumar, and he sent down for you 8 head of cattle in pairs, and not saying, and he created for you 8 head of cattle in pairs, the Quran of miraculous exposition is stating that 8 sorts of blessed animals have been sent down to you from the blessed treasury of mercy, like the bounties of paradise. Yes, those blessed animals are bounty for mankind with all their parts, for their wool or hair becomes mobile homes and clothes of nomads. Good food is made from their flesh. Delicious sustenance is had from their milk. Shoes and so on are made from their hides. Cultivated land is nourished by their manure, and men make fuel from it. It as though those blessed animals are pure bounty and embodied mercy. It is because of this that like rain is called mercy, rahmah. These blessed beasts are called bounty, anam. And though just as embodied mercy becomes rain, so too embodied bounty takes on the form of goats, sheep, cattle, water buffalo, and camels. For sure, their physical bodies are created on the earth, but since the attribute of being bounties and the meaning of mercy have totally predominated over their physical beings, in accordance with the phrase, and he sent down, the all-compassionate Creator sent down these blessed animals directly from the exalted degree of his mercy and his elevated and immaterial paradise as gifts from the treasury of mercy. Sometimes, in material worth, virtually nothing is art of high worth. Then, it is not in respect of the material's value, but from the point of view of its art and the value given it, like the tiny material being of a fly and the sublime dominical art within it. Sometimes invaluable material worth 5 lira is art worth nothing. Then, it is the material that is dominant. In exactly the same way, sometimes in some physical material, the meaning of bounty and mercy is found to such a degree that it is 100 times more important than the material. The physical matter quite simply is hidden, and its aspect of being bounty is predominant. Thus, just as the vast benefits of iron and many products it yields conceal its material aspect, so too bounty, being present in every member of the blessed animals mentioned above, has transformed their physical matter into bounty. It is because of this that their immaterial attributes have been considered. Disregarding their physical beings, and expressed with the phrases, he sent down and we sent down. In addition to those two phrases stating the above-mentioned point in regard to reality, they miraculously express an important meaning in respect of eloquence. It is as follows. Together with its extremely tough nature and its being hidden, frequently deep underground, iron is found everywhere. Bestowed with the quality of being easily softened, everyone can therefore obtain it easily, everywhere, for everything. In order to express this, it states through the phrase, and we sent down iron. That is, though iron tools are sent down from a workbench above as natural, heavenly bounties and placed in man's hand, they are obtained so easily. Furthermore, although some animal species, from the mosquito to snakes, scorpions, wolves and lions, are harmful to human beings, large beasts like water buffalo, ox and camel, who are important among animals, are extremely docile and submissive, so much so that they may be led by even a child. In order to express the meaning of their submissiveness, the verse, and he sent down for you 8 head of cattle in pairs, states that being neither wild nor dangerous, these blessed beasts do not resemble worldly animals. They are rather beneficial and harmless, like paradisical animals. They have been sent down from above, that is, from the treasury of mercy. It is possible that some Quranic commentators, saying that these animals have been sent down from paradise, arises from this meaning. It should not be said it is lengthy to write a page on a single letter of the all-wise Quran, for it is Allah's word. Footnote number 3. What some Quranic commentators intended by saying their origins were the heavens was this: the continued existence of the animals known as Anan is through sustenance, and their sustenance is fodder. The fodder's sustenance is rain. Rain is the water of life and mercy, so sustenance also comes from the heavens. The verse, and in the heavens is our sustenance, Quran Surah 51, verse 22, alludes to this. Since those animals' continually renewed existences lie in the rain which comes from the skies, the expression, and he sent down, is apt, for it expresses the meaning of having been sent down from the sky. It has therefore not been wasteful to write 2 or 3 pages on the expression, and we sent down. Sometimes one letter of the Quran is the key to a treasury. Pieces written in Eskishehir Prison as a true solace for the Risale-i students. My dear brothers, I was exceedingly unhappy for you. I was crushed by grief. But it was imparted to me that divine determining and your fate has given you this prison's water to drink and bread to eat altogether. I saw that as a mark of divine mercy and manifestation of dominical favour, your eating this bread together and drinking this water was the easiest, lightest, best and most meritorious of ways, that this prison was a most beneficial place of instruction for the Risale-i students, and a most effulgent place of ordeal, that it was a most exacting place of examination, teaching just how essential it is to act prudently in the face of one's enemies. I saw it in the form of a most luminous place of study and teke for learning, and benefiting from the elevated qualities and fine characteristics of our friends here, which are all different, and to establish and renew the brotherhood between them. And I did not complain about the situation before, but offered thanks with all my spirit. Yes, our way is thanks, and it is to see an aspect of mercy, an aspect of bounty in everything. From your brother, who is grieved at the pains of all of you. Sayyid Nursi. A rule. Risale-i students should not seek light outside the circle of the Risale-i. They cannot seek it. If they do, they will find a lamp in the place of the immaterial sun giving light through the window of the Risale-i, and perhaps lose the sun. Also, the pure and powerful way of friendship and brotherhood within the circle of the Risale-i, which gains numerous spirits for each individual, and through the mystery of the legacy of prophethood, shows the companion's way of brotherhood, leaves no need for seeking a spiritual guide or father outside that sphere, in a way that is harmful to them in three respects. It provides many abis, that is, elder brothers, in place of a single father. The joint compassion of elder brothers makes that of a father as nothing. Someone who has a sheikh before entering the Risale-i circle may keep his sheikh or guide after entering it, but one who does not have a sheikh beforehand may only seek a guide within the circle. Moreover, the knowledge of reality taught within the circle of the Risale-i, which gives the effulgence of the legacy of prophethood, the greater sainthood, leaves no need for the Sufi orders outside that circle, unless, of course, they be self-indulgent people who misunderstand the way of Sufism, are addicted to the pleasant dreams and imaginings, lights and spiritual pleasures, desire worldly, fanciful pleasures, which are different to the virtues of the hereafter, and want a rank where people have recourse to them. This world is a place of labour and service. Recompense is commensurate with hardship and difficulty. It is not the place of reward. It is because of this that people of reality attach no importance to the pleasures and lights of illuminations and wonder-working. Indeed, they sometimes flee from them and want to conceal them. Furthermore, the Risale-i circle is very broad and its students very numerous. It does not seek those who go out from it. It gives them no importance and perhaps will not again admit them. Everyone has one heart, and a single heart cannot be both within the circle and outside it. Also, those desirous for guidance outside should not busy themselves with the Risale-i students, for it is possible that they will receive harm in three respects. Just as those within the bounds of fear of Allah are not in need of guidance, outside it there are abundant people who do not perform the 5 daily prayers. To leave aside the latter and busy oneself with the former is not guidance. If such a person loves these students, let him firstly enter the circle and not be a father, but a brother, and if he is very virtuous, an elder brother. It has become apparent from this incident that being attached to the Risale-i holds much importance and has a high price. And if he is sensible, one who gives this price up and takes up a position of striving against irreligion in the name of the Islamic world will not abandon this way, which has the value of diamonds, and embrace other ways. Said. A short piece written in Eskishehir Prison. My brothers, on numerous occasions I have defended the Risale-i students in the manner of which they are worthy. Allah willing, I shall shout it out in court. I shall make the world hear both of the Risale-i and of its students' value. Only I remind you of the following. The condition of my retaining this mention of your value in my defence is not your feeling offended at the Risale-i due to your painful experiences in this affair, nor at your master, nor to feel disgust at your brothers on the pretext of the difficulties you suffer, nor to find fault with or accuse one another. You will recall that in the treatise on divine determining we have proved that there are 2 aspects to the wrongs that are visited on us. One is man's aspect, the other, divine determinings. In the same event, man does wrong, but divine determining is fair and acts in justice. In this matter of ours, we should think more of the justice of divine determining and mystery of divine wisdom than man's tyranny and wrongdoing. Yes, divine determining summoned the Risale-i students to this gathering, and the wisdom in this was the unfolding of their striving and struggle, which drove them to this truly very distressing school of Joseph. Man's tyranny and pretext were the means. So beware, do not say to one another, if I had not done such and such, I would not have been arrested. Said Nursi. Part of my defence speech which was included here and not later removed. I seek an important right from the Chief and members of the Court as follows. In this matter, it is not only my person which is under scrutiny, so that with your exonerating me and becoming aware of the reality of the case would be solved. For the collective personality of the pious and people of learning has been incriminated in the eyes of the nation, and a lack of confidence has been engendered in the government towards the pious and religious scholars, and they need to know how they will avoid dangerous and harmful attempts against them. I therefore request that this last part of my defence to be printed in the new letters and distributed. Then the pious and the scholars will not be deceived by the intrigues or embark on any dangerous and damaging enterprises. Their collective personality will be saved from being the object of suspicion in the eyes of the nation. The government too will have confidence in the scholars, and an end will be put to this misunderstanding. Incidences and misunderstandings like this, which are extremely harmful for the government and the nation and the country, will not be repeated. Said Nursi. My brothers, if everyone, and even I, withdraw from defending and preserving the Risale-i, 5 of our brothers should not withdraw. These are Hussein, Usta, Halil Ibrahim, Refet Bey, Husrev, and Hakkı Effendi. The involuntary lack of caution of the first 3, because of the personal grudges of the open enemies of the latter 2. The intention was to cause excessive harm to the Risale-i. If it had not resulted in a great bounty like the Risale-i being spread and made known to a significant degree, these brothers would have been greatly upset at having caused the unhappiness of so many innocent Risale-i students. Thus, more than everyone, these 5 brothers must be cautious and united. Said Nursi. My brothers, it was imparted to my heart that, like the Methnawi, was the mirror to one of the 7 truths appearing from the sun of the Quran, thus acquiring a sacred illustriousness and becoming the undying guide of numerous people of the heart besides the Mevlevis. So too represented together in the mirror of the Risale-i are the 7 colours of the Quranic sun's light and its various multicoloured effulgences. Allah willing, it will be an eternal guide and teacher for the people of reality, illustrious and sacred in 7 respects, as much as 7 Methnawis. My brothers, look at the protection of the all-glorious Preserver. As a consequence, with the number of treatises of the Risale-i, 120 people were questioned together with their confidential documents. Yet, despite the intrigues of the foreigners and the stratagems of the secret societies, nothing was found to connect any Risale-i student with any of the many existent associations. This was a most clear and brilliant instance of dominical protection, divine preservation, and a favour of the most merciful, corroborating the wondrous predictions concerning the Risale-i of Imam Ali, may Allah be pleased with him, and Gawth al-Azam, may Allah be pleased with him. The hands of 42 of our innocent, wronged brothers, raised in supplication to the divine court, halted a missile directed at them, turned it back, and in effect exploded it over the heads of those who had fired it. Our losses only amount to a few minor cuts and bruises, which will gain us reward. It is a marvel to be saved with such minor injury from a gun that was being charged for the past year. One should respond to such a great bounty with thanks and joy. After this, our lives will not be our own. For according to the plans of the spreaders of corruption, we were to be completely wiped out. That means, after this, we should pledge our lives not to ourselves, but to truth and reality. We should try to always see the trace, face, and essence of mercy in things, which will cause us not to complain, but to offer thanks. Said Nursi. I request of my brothers that they are not offended at one another due to discomfort or distress of the spirit, or fastidiousness, or being deceived by Satan's wiles, or at the offensive language uttered by some of them. They should not say that their honour has been insulted. I take on myself any bad words that are uttered. They should not be offended. If I had 100 honours, I would sacrifice all of them for love and cordiality among my brothers. Save Nursi. My brothers, I have understood certainly that the last 2 or 3 days that unfortunately we have suffered a blow from divine mercy. I understood even that one of many indications of a verse concerning the people of rebellion looks to us. It is this: but when they forgot the warning they had received, on a sudden we called them to account. Quran Surah 6 verse 44, Surah 7 verse 165. That is, when they had forgot the instruction and advice with which we have warned them, and did not act in accordance with it, we took hold of them and afflicted them with disaster. Yes, recently we were prompted to write a treatise on the meaning of sincerity. In truth, it was a most luminous and exalted rule of brotherhood, a sacred principle which allows 10 men to withstand calamities and events which normally could only be withstood with the strength of tens of thousands. But, unfortunately, we, and foremost myself, did not act in accordance with the warning, in accordance with the elusive meaning of the verse. According to the science of Jafir, the value of "we called them to account" is 1,352. We were arrested on the same date. Some of us suffered a slap dealt by divine compassion. Others suffered not such a blow, but were included in these tribulations, in order to be a solace to our brothers who did suffer it, and as a means of earning reward and profit. For 3 months I was barred from mixing with others, but for the past 3 days I have been able to learn my brothers' states of mind. An unimaginable incident had occurred opposed to the meaning of sincerity, involving brothers whom I had supposed to be most sincere. I understood from this that an elusive meaning of the verse, but when they forgot the warning they had received, on a sudden we called them to account, looked to us from afar. For the people of misguidance, for whom the verse was revealed, it is a punishment, but for us it is a blow from divine compassion, in order to train our souls as atonement for sins, and so that we may increase our spiritual degrees. Evidence that we suffered this blow, because we did not completely appreciate the value of the divine bounty we had received, is that we were not contented with the sacred service of the Quran through the Risale-i, but a most sacred striving in Allah's way, which receives the effulgence of greater sainthood, through the mystery of the legacy of prophethood, and as a means to attaining the essence of the way of companions. Through my severe warnings on several occasions, the wish to join a Sufi order was forestalled, the advantages of which are very few for us, and at the moment could possibly have caused us much harm in this situation. Otherwise, both our unity would have been destroyed, and it would have caused both differences in ideas, which would have reduced the value of 4 alifs, which through solidarity is 1,111 to 4, and mutual antipathy, which would have reduced our strength to nothing. The author of Gulistan, Sheikh Said Shirazi, relates, "I saw one of the people of the heart in a tekke, well occupied with his spiritual journeying. Several days later, I saw him among the students in a medrese. I asked him why he had left the effulgent tekke and come to the religious school. I replied, there everyone could save themselves, if they were successful, whereas here in the religious school, these persons of high aspiration were trying to save many others besides themselves. Nobility and high endeavour were theirs. Virtue and exertion were theirs. That was why he went there." Sheikh Sadi wrote a summary of this in his Gulistan. So if the small matter of students passing verbs is superior to the recitation in the tekes, since the Risale-i teaches in the clearest and most certain manner the sacred truths of belief, of the confession of faith, I believe in Allah and His angels and His books and His prophets and in the last day, and silences the most obdurate atheists and obstinate philosophers to abandon it, or cause its activities to come to a standstill, or not to be content with it, and desiring the Sufi way to enter the dissolved Sufi tekes without asking permission of the Risale-i is entirely wrong and shows how much we deserve this blow of divine compassion. Sayyid Nursi. Warning. 2 short stories. The first. 15 years ago, when a prisoner of war in the north of Russia, I was being held together with 90 other officers in a large factory. Numerous arguments and disturbances arose due to the discomfort and oppressive conditions. I used to pacify them, since they all had great respect for me. I appointed 4 or 5 officers to keep the peace, telling them, whenever you hear an uproar, go there and help whichever side is in the wrong. It is a fact that with this precaution a stop was put to the noise. They asked me why I helped those who were in the wrong. In reply, I told them, those who are in the wrong are unfair. They do not give up a single benefit for the sake of public peace 40 times greater. Whereas someone who is in the right is fair. He sacrifices and waives his own right, worth little, for the advantage of his friend, which is part of the public peace and worth much. The disturbance ceases and peace is restored. The 90 people in this ward can be comfortable. If the person in the right is helped, the noise would increase even more. In communal life of this sort, the general benefit takes precedence. And so, my brothers, in this communal life of ours, do not say, I am fed up with my brother, for he is unfair to me. It is a great error. If such a friend of yours has caused you a little harm, your being angry with him causes a harm of high cost. It is possible it would cause excessive harm to the Risale-i. But praise be to Allah, with our friends being prevented from repeatedly going to be questioned, no harm came to our powerful and rightful defences. Otherwise, like getting something as tiny as a fly's wing in one's eye, or a spark falling into gunpowder, due to a little pique, our brothers who are vexed with one another can cause a great deal of harm. Second story. There was once an elderly woman who had 8 sons. She gave each of them a loaf of bread from the loaves she had, but none remained for herself. So each of them gave her half his loaf. She then had 4 loaves, while theirs was reduced to half a loaf. My brothers, I feel in myself half the pains of the share in this calamity of each of the 40 of you. I take no notice of my own hardships. One day, I felt excessively afflicted and studied my previous position, wondering if I was paying the penalty of some error I had committed. I saw that I had no part in all the fomenting incitement of this calamity. On the contrary, I had employed every possible means to avoid it. That means it is a divine decree. It has been planned against us by intriguers over the past year and made inevitable. It was not possible to avoid it. It was inevitable that we should be embroiled in it. 100,000 thanks to Almighty Allah that He reduced the calamity from 100 to 1. As a consequence of this fact, therefore, do not blame me saying, we are suffering this disaster because of you. Forgive me rather, and pray for me. And do not criticize each other, saying, if you had not done such and such, this would not have happened. For example, with one of our brothers mentioning 2 or 3 signatures, the plan of the mischief makers were hatching in order to embroil numerous people in a calamity was restricted, and many were saved from it. It was the cause not of harm, but of great advantage. It resulted in many innocent people being saved from this disaster. Sayyid Nursi. This piece is very valuable. Everyone may benefit from it as far as the second point. In connection with certain unpleasant situations which came about in Eskishehir Prison, not through bad morality, but because of the distress. This is about one fine point of a well-known verse that has remained undisclosed, and a point concerning good behaviour. First point. Out of His perfect munificence, compassion and justice, Almighty Allah has included in good works an immediate reward, and in bad actions an immediate punishment. He has included in good works spiritual pleasures that recall the rewards of the hereafter, while in bad works are spiritual penalties which recall the torments of hell. For example, love between believers is a praiseworthy action for the people of faith. Included in that good work are spiritual pleasure, gratification, and ease of mind that recall the physical rewards of the hereafter. Anyone who refers to his heart will feel this pleasure. And for example, enmity and hostility between believers are an evil that cause noble spirits to feel torment of the conscience enough to overwhelm the heart and spirit. I myself have experienced it, perhaps more than 100 times. When I felt enmity towards a believing brother, I have suffered such torment that it has left me in no doubt that it was the immediate punishment for my evil deed. And for example, to be respectful towards those worthy of respect, and compassionate to those worthy of compassion, and to assist them, are good works, good deeds. There are a pleasure and gratification in these good works, so great that they make felt the rewards of the hereafter, and they increase the respect and compassion to the extent that they make a person ready to sacrifice his own life. The pleasure and reward a mother receives through the compassion she feels for her child may be so great that she will sacrifice her life due to it. The hen who attacks a lion in order to save her chick is an example of this truth in the animal kingdom. This means that there is an immediate reward in compassion and respect. Magnanimous people of high aspiration feel it, and for this reason assume their heroic attitude. And for example, in greed and wastefulness is such a punishment that, afflicting his heart and spirit, it makes a man complaining and anxious and bewilders him. And in jealousy and envy is such an immediate punishment that it scorches the one who feels them, while in contentment and reliance on Allah is an immediate pleasurable reward that is such that it dispels all the pains and tribulations of poverty and indigence. And for example, in pride and conceit is a heavy burden, for the proud man wants respect from everyone, and because he is despised due to this desire, he suffers constant torment. Yes, respect is given, it may not be sought. And for example, in humility, the giving up of egotism is a pleasurable reward by which a person is saved from the heavy burden of trying to make himself liked. And for example, in pessimism, and always interpreting things unfavourably, is an immediate punishment in this world. In accordance with the rule, whoever strikes is struck. Those who think unfavourably of others are also thought of unfavourably. The actions of those who misinterpret the actions of their believing brothers are also misinterpreted, and they suffer punishment for it. And so on. All good and bad deeds should be measured according to this yardstick. I beseech Divine Mercy that those who witness the Quranic miraculousness manifested at this time in the Risale-i experience these spiritual pleasures. They will not suffer from bad morals, Allah willing. Second point. The second of 22 points. In the name of Allah, the Merciful, the Compassionate. I created not jinn and mankind except that they might worship me. No sustenance do I require of them, nor do I require that they should feed me. For Allah is He who gives all sustenance, Lord of power, steadfast forever. Quran, Surah 51 to 56, verse 8. For a long time, these verses worried my mind, since according to many Quranic commentaries, their apparent meaning did not reflect the Quran's elevated miraculousness. I shall now explain briefly 3 aspects of their extremely beautiful and exalted meanings, which proceed from the effulgence of the Quran. The first. Sometimes Almighty Allah attributes to Himself certain states that could pertain to His Messenger, so as to honour and exalt him. Here also the verses, I created you for worship, not to give me sustenance and feed me, have this meaning. My messenger does not want a wage, recompense or reward, or to be fed in return for his duty of messengership, and conveying to you your duties of worship. They refer to the noble messenger, peace and blessings be upon him, being given food and sustenance. Otherwise, it would be making known something self-evident and clear, and would be inappropriate to the Quran's miraculous eloquence. The second aspect. Man is excessively preoccupied with his sustenance. So in order that he should not be deluded into making his obtaining it a pretext for neglecting worship, nor make it an excuse, the verse says, you were created for worship. The result of your creation is worship. Winning sustenance is worship of a sort, from the point of view of its being a divine command. I have undertaken to provide your sustenance, and that of your families and animals, my creatures. It pertains to me. You were not created to procure food and sustenance, for I am the provider. I provide the sustenance of my servants, your dependents. So do not make it an excuse and give up worship. If its meaning is not this, it becomes a statement of the obvious. For to provide Almighty Allah with food and sustenance is self-evidently impossible and obvious. It is an established rule of rhetoric that if the meaning of a sentence is clear and obvious, it is not that meaning which is intended, but a meaning necessitated by it and dependent on it. For example, if you say to someone, you are a hafiz, it is stating the obvious. The intended meaning is, I know that you are a hafiz. You are informing him because he did not know that you knew. Thus, as a consequence of this rule, the meaning of the verse in which the prohibition of giving food to Almighty Allah is a metaphor is this: you were not created in order to produce food for my creatures, which are mine, and the providing of whose sustenance I have undertaken. Your fundamental duty is worship, but to strive to procure sustenance in accordance with my commands is also a sort of worship. The third aspect. Since in Surah Al-Ikhlas, the apparent meaning of he begets not, nor is he begotten, Quran, Surah 112, verse 3, is self-evident and obvious, another meaning is intended, which is necessitated by it. That is to say, Almighty Allah states extremely clearly and self-evidently, he begets not, nor is he begotten, meaning, those with a father and a mother cannot be gods, and pre-eternal and post-eternal, with the intention of denying the divinity of Jesus, peace be upon him, and of Uzayr, and the angels and stars, and other false gods. In exactly the same way, in our example too, the verse, the all-glorious provider, your object of worship does not require sustenance for himself. You were not created to provide him with food, which has the meaning of, things with the ability to receive sustenance and food cannot be gods and objects of worship, meaning beings which are in need of sustenance and being provided for are not worthy of worship. Sayyid Nursi. In the name of Allah, the Merciful, the Compassionate. Or while they slept for the afternoon rest. Quran Surah 7, verse 4. This was written in connection with Refet being curious and asking about the word Qa'ilun, slept for their afternoon rest, in the verse, or while they slept for their afternoon rest, and to prevent his diamond-like pen from becoming idle in prison due to the lethargy resulting from sleeping after the morning prayer like the others. Sleep is of three sorts. The first, Gailula. This is the pre-dawn to 40 minutes or so after the sun has risen, the time when prayer is lawful but reprehensible. Sleep at this time is contrary to the practices of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, since according to hadiths, it leads to a decrease in one's livelihood and to its being unfruitful. The time most appropriate for preparing to labour for one's sustenance is when it is cool. When this time has passed, a lethargy descends. It has been established, through numerous experiences, that just as this is detrimental to the day's labour and indirectly to one's livelihood, so also it is the cause of unfruitfulness. The second, Failula. This is from the afternoon prayer till sunset. This sleep leads to a diminution of life. That is, it makes life that day shorter, and makes it pass in a state of semi-sleep due to drowsiness, thus causing a physical deficiency to life. So too, in an immaterial aspect, since most of the results of that day, material and immaterial, become apparent after the afternoon prayer, to pass that time in sleep as though prevents these results from being seen and makes the day as though not lived. The third is Kailula, which is in accordance with the practices of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. It is from mid-afternoon to just past noon. This sleep is part of the practices, since it allows a person to rise at night to pray. So also in the Arabian Peninsula, to rest from work at noon, when it is intensely hot, is the custom of the people of the area. So has further strengthened this practice of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. This sleep increases both life and sustenance. For half an hour's sleep, Kailula sleep, is the equivalent of 2 hours sleep at night. That means it adds 1.5 hours to the person's life every day. It saves 1.5 hours from the hand of sleep, the brother of death, and makes it live, adding to the time of working for one's livelihood. Say Nursi. This is good as well. While reciting, endless blessings and endless peace be upon you, O Messenger of Allah, in the Tesbihat, following the prayers, I saw from afar a subtle point which was gradually unfolded. I was unable to grasp all of it, and shall recount 1 or 2 sentences by way of alluding to it. I saw that the world of the night is like a newly opened dwelling of the world. I entered that world during Isha, the prayer at nightfall, since man is connected to all the world through the extraordinary expansion of the imagination. I saw the mighty world that night as a dwelling. Living creatures and men became so tiny that they were invisible. I observed with the imagination the only thing that inhabited that dwelling and made it familiar and filled it with light was the collective personality of Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. Like a person greets those present when he enters a house, I was overwhelmed with the desire to say, "Endless peace be upon you, O Messenger of Allah." Footnote number 1. The divine mercy which came to Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, looks to the needs of all his community through all eternity. For this reason, endless greetings are in place. If someone enters a vast house like the world, desolate and empty and dark through heedlessness, how frightened and dismayed he will be. Then suddenly the house is lit up and a familiar, friendly, lovable and beloved lieutenant appears in the forefront. If he describes and makes known as the house's compassionate and generous owner through all its fittings and furnishings, you can understand what joy, familiarity, happiness, light and ease it will give. You can appreciate the value and pleasure of the greetings for the messenger, peace and blessings be upon him, from this. It was as though I was greeting him to the number of all men and jinn. That is to say, I offered greetings meaning, I renew my allegiance to you, accept your mission, submit to the laws and commands you brought, and state through the greetings that they will be safe from our assaults. And I make all parts of my world and all jinn and men, all conscious beings speak, offering greetings in the name of all of them. As he illuminated my world through the light and gift he brought, so he illuminates and fills with bounties the worlds of everyone in the world. In grateful response for the gift, I exclaimed, "Endless blessings be upon you." That is, we cannot respond to this goodness of yours, so we shall show our gratitude to you by beseeching that mercy bestowed upon you from our Creator's treasury of mercy, to the number of the inhabitants of the heavens. I perceived this meaning in my imagination. In respect of his worship, and on account of his being turned from creation to Creator, the person of Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, requires blessings which have the meaning of mercy. While in respect of his messengership and being the envoy sent from Creator to creation, he requires peace. He is worthy of peace to the number of jinn and men, and we offer a general renewal of our allegiance to their number. So too he is worthy of blessings from the treasury of mercy to the number of the inhabitants of the heavens, and in the name of all of them. For it was through the light he brought that the perfections of all things became apparent, and the value of all beings was made manifest, and the dominical duties of all creatures could be observed, and the divine purposes in all creatures were made known. Therefore, if all things uttered verbally what they express through their tongues of disposition, it is certain that they would declare, "Blessings and peace be upon you, O Messenger of Allah." And we say in the name of all of them, "Endless blessing and endless peace be upon you, O Prophet of Allah," to the number of jinn and men, and of angels and stars. It is enough that Allah grants his blessings, and assigns him peace and benedictions. Sayyid Nursi. My dear brother, you want an explanation of the unity of existence. In one of the flashes of the 31st letter, there is a very powerful and elucidating answer to Hadrat Muhyiddin's ideas concerning this matter. For now, we just say the following. Teaching this question of the unity of existence to people at the present time causes serious harm. Like when metaphors and similes pass from the hands of the learned to those of the common people, and knowledge passes from scholars to the ignorant, they are thought to be literally true. So too when elevated truths, such as the unity of existence, pass to the heedless and to the common people, submerged in causes, they are thought to be nature, and cause 3 significant instances of harm. Footnote number 1. Just like the 2 angels called bull and the fish, in connection with certain metaphors, were supposed by the common people to be a vast bull and enormous fish. The first, the way of the unity of existence, is quite simply denying the universe on account of Almighty Allah. Despite this, when it is adopted by the heedless common people and enters their ideas, which are tainted by materialist thought in particular, it leads to the denial of the Godhead on account of the universe and materiality. The second, the way of the unity of existence rejects all the dominicality of anything other than Allah so vehemently that it denies all other than Allah and removes duality. Since it does not recognize the independent existence of anything, let alone that of evil commanding souls, with the predominance of the idea of nature at this time, and pride and egotism inflating the evil commanding soul, and causing the hereafter and the Creator to be forgotten, to inculcate the unity of existence in people whose evil commanding souls are small pharaohs, and quite simply are disposed to taking their own selves as objects of worship, so inflates the evil commanding soul that, I seek refuge with Allah, it can no longer be contained. The third, while the All-Glorious One is free and exempt from, pure and exalted above all, alteration, division, and being comprehended in time or place, the unity of existence gives rise to conceptions which are not fitting for his necessary existence, holiness, and being free of all defect, and leads to false teachings. Yes, if one who speaks of the unity of existence rises in the mind from the ground to the Pleiades, leaves the universe behind, and fixes his gaze on the sublime throne, ecstatically reckoning the universe to be non-existent through the strength of his belief, he may see everything to be directly from the single one of unity. But for one who stands behind the universe and looks at it, and sees causes before him, and looks from the ground, is the possibility of becoming submerged in causes and immersed in the swamp of nature. The one who rises in the mind to the divine throne may say like Jalaluddin Rumi, "Listen, the words you hear uttered by everyone, you may hear as uttered by Almighty Allah, like natural gramophones. But if you say to the one who cannot rise as high as Jalaluddin, nor see all beings from the ground to the divine throne in the form of mirrors, listen, you will hear the divine speech from everything. He will in effect fall from the throne to the ground, and will be afflicted by false imaginings, contrary to the truth. Say, Allah sent it down, then leave them to plunge in vain discourse and trifling. Glory be to the one whose essence is holy and above anything similar to it, and whose attributes are free of anything resembling them, and whose signs testify to his dominicality. May his glory be exalted, for there is no God but he. The answer to a question. I do not have the time to weigh up the ideas of Mustafa Sabri and those of Musa Bekov. I shall only say this much, that he was the one of excessive and the other deficient. Mustafa Sabri was right relatively to Musa Bekov, but it is not right to denigrate someone like Muhyiddin, who was a miracle of the Islamic sciences. Yes, himself, Muhyiddin, was rightly guided and acceptable, but in all his works cannot be the guide and instructor, since he very often proceeded in the realities without balance. He opposed the rules of the Sunnis, and some of his things, he said, apparently expressed misguidance. However, he himself is free of misguidance. Sometimes a word may appear to be unbelief, but the one who spoke it is not an unbeliever. Mustafa Sabri did not take these points into consideration. He was extreme concerning certain points of the Sunni law due to bigotry. As for Musa Bekov, due to being excessively in favour of renewal, and because of the concessions he made to modernity in respect of his ideas, he was very much in error. He corrupts some of the truths of Islam with his false interpretations. By holding someone rejected, like Abdul Allah al-Mari, to be superior to authoritative scholars, favouring disproportionately matters of Muhyiddin opposing the Sunnis because they suited his own ideas, he went far to excess. Muhyiddin said, "Those who are not one of us and do not know our station should not read our books, for it may be damaging for them." Yes, at this time it is harmful to read Muhyiddin's books, especially the matters about the unity of existence. Sayyid Nursi. Footnotes number 1 and 2. Mustafa Sabri, 1869 to 1954, a leading religious scholar and public figure in the last decades of the Ottoman Empire. He was a publisher of the journal Bayun-il-Haq and Sheikhu al-Islam, 1919 to 1920. He left Turkey in 1922 and remained in exile in Egypt till his death. Musa Jarul Bigi Yef, a native of Turkestan and reformist Islamic scholar and prominent figure. He was sent into exile by the Russians in 1904, together with Abdul Rashid Ibrahim, and was the author of many works. In the name of Allah, the Merciful, the Compassionate. I shall explain a matter that unfolded before the gaze of my imagination while watching from my prison window, through the lens of prudence and foresight, one glittery night of the festival, the laughter of mankind that would turn into tears. In the same way that the lives of those previous ages who live in the graveyard may be seen in the cinema, it was as though I had seen the moving corpses of those who would dwell in the graveyard in the near future. I wept for those merrymakers. All of a sudden, a feeling of desolation and pity came over me. I turned to my intellect and asked of reality, "What is this imagining?" Reality replied, saying, "In 50 years' time, out of those 50 who are laughing and enjoying themselves with such joy, 5 will be bent and stooping 70-year-olds, while 45 will have rotted in the graveyard. Those beautiful features and joyful smiles will have been transformed into their opposites. According to the rule, everything that is coming is close. Since it is to some degree true that these things that are going to happen in the near future are seen to have already arrived, then surely what you see is not imagination. Furthermore, since the heedless laughter of this world veils bitter facts that thus turn into tears, and is temporary and subject to decline, then most certainly it is only thankful, innocent enjoyment within the bounds of the licit, which leads to awareness of Allah's presence and dispels heedlessness, and pleasures that will be permanent by reason of their reward, that will cause joy to wretched man's heart, Tegra, to wretched man's internally worshipping heart, and his spirit, which has an irresistible desire for immortality, and make them smile. It is because of this that there are among the narrations many that strongly encourage thanks and remembrance of Allah at festival times. in order to prevent heedlessness from prevailing and deviation into the illicit. To do this at such times may transform the bounties of joy and happiness into thanks, and make the bounty continue and increase it. For thanks increases bounty and dispels heedlessness. Sayyid Nursi. In the name of Allah, the Merciful, the Compassionate. This concerns one point contained in the verse. The human soul is certainly prone to evil. Quran Surah 12, verse 53. And in the hadith, the meaning of which is, your worst enemy is your soul. One who loves himself, if his evil commanding soul has not been purified, will love no one else. Even if he apparently loves someone, he does not do so sincerely, but only for the pleasure of it and for the benefit he receives. He always tries to make himself liked. Also, he does not ascribe faults to himself. He defends and exonerates himself like a lawyer. He praises himself, exaggerating and even lying, showing himself to be free of fault, as though sanctifying himself, and according to his degree receives a slap from the verse. Who takes as Allah his desires. Quran, Surah 25, verse 43, Surah 45, verse 23. His self-praise and efforts to make himself liked have the reverse effect. He attracts contempt and is treated coldly. He also loses sincerity in his actions, which look to the hereafter, and they become mixed with hypocrisy. He is defeated by the emotions and desires of the soul, which are blind to the consequences, do not think of the results, and are obsessed with his present pleasure. He serves a year's prison sentence because of 1 hour's pleasure demanded by his emotions, which have lost their way. He pays 10 years' penalty on account of 1 minute's pride or revenge. Quite simply, like a silly child who sells the portion of the Quran he is learning to buy a single sweet, in order to flatter his emotions, gratify his senses, and satisfy his appetites. He makes his good deeds the means to egotistical pleasures, like insignificant fragments of glass, and he loses out in profitable works. O Allah, preserve us from the evil of the soul and of Satan, and from the evil of jinn and men. A question. How can incarceration in hell for an infinite duration in return for unbelief for a short duration be justice? The answer. Reckoning a year to be 365 days, the law of justice requires for 1 minute murder 7,884,000 minutes imprisonment. So since 1 minute's unbelief is like 1,000 murders, according to the law of human justice, someone who lives a life of 20 years in unbelief and dies in that state deserves imprisonment for 57,201,200 million years. It may be understood from this how conformable with divine justice is the verse, they will dwell therein forever. Quran Surah 33, verse 65, etc. The reason for this connection between these two numbers so far from one another is this. Since murder and unbelief are destruction and aggression, they have an effect on others. A murder which takes 1 minute negates on average at least 15 years of the victim's life, so the murderer is imprisoned in their place. While since 1 minute of unbelief denies 1,001 divine names and denigrates their inscriptions, violates the rights of the universe and denies its perfections, and gives the lie to innumerable evidences of divine unity and rejects their testimony, the unbeliever is cast down to the lowest of the low for more than 1,000 years and dwells in imprisonment. A meaningful and subtle coincidence. The coincidence of Article 163, footnote number 1, Article 163 of the Turkish Criminal Code. Under the Risale-i students were charged and sentenced, and the number of deputies, 163 out of 200, which allotted 153,000 liras for the medress of the Risale-i's author, in effect says this: the appreciative signatures of 163 deputies of the government of the Republic quashes the ruling of Article 163 of the Criminal Code concerning them. Another subtle and meaningful coincidence is this. The 128 parts of the Risale-i are formed into 115 booklets. The number of days from when the Risale-i students and its author were first arrested on the 27th of April 1935 to the date on which the court passed judgment on the 19th of August 1935 was 115, coinciding with the number of books of the Risale-i. In addition, the 115 people found guilty coincides with the number exactly, showing that the calamity visited on the Risale-i students and its authors is being regulated by the hand of favour. Footnote number 3. It is worth noting that the arrests of some of the Risale-i students started on the 25th of April 1935. Thus, because of the indictment, 117 people were cited as guilty. The names of 2 of them had been repeated. The number shown for the students was 117. This coincided with 117 days from the date that the group was arrested to the date of the court's judgment, adding a further subtlety to the former coincidence. The 28th point of the 28th flash. In the name of Allah, the Merciful, the Compassionate. So they should not strain their ears in the direction of the exalted assembly, but be cast away from every side, repulsed, for they are under a perpetual penalty, except such as snatch away something by stealth, and they are pursued by a flaming fire of piercing brightness. And we have adorned the lowest heaven with lamps, and we have made them missiles to drive away the evil ones. Quran Surah 37, verses 8 to 10, and Quran Surah 67, verse 5. An important point concerning verses like these will be explained in connection with criticisms made by the people of misguidance. It is as follows. Spies from among the jinn and Satans eavesdrop on events in the heavens, and like soothsayers, mediums, and some spiritualists, convey news from the world of the unseen, in order that their giving information about the unseen should not give rise to any doubts when the Quran was first revealed. Their continual espionage was prevented to a greater extent, and they were repulsed by shooting stars. The following is a brief reply to an extremely important question in 3 parts concerning the above verses, which are about this subject. Question. It is understood from verses like these that spying Satans infiltrate the distant lands of the heavens in order to learn some minor and even personal event in the unseen, as though there were rumours of the minor event everywhere in those vast lands. Wherever it is infiltrated by whichever Satan, it will hear a confused version of the reports and will pass it on. However, reason and science cannot accept such a thing. Also, it is said that some of the people of prophethood and some wonder workers, as though pluck from close to the fruits of paradise, which according to definite verses of the Quran is above the heavens, and sometimes gaze on paradise from near at hand. This matter, which concerns infinite distance within infinite proximity, is not conformable with the understanding of the present age. Also, the unimportant situation of an unimportant person being the subject of discussion of the sublime assembly in the universal, vast land of the heavens is not conformable with the wisdom of the most wise administration of the universe. Nevertheless, these 3 matters are considered to be among the truths of Islam. The answer. Firstly, in the 7 steps of the treatise called the 15th word, the repulsion and ejection with stars of diabolical spies from the heavens expressed by the verse, and we have adorned the lowest heavens with lamps, and we have made them missiles to drive away the evil ones, is proved so certainly with 7 introductions that it convinces the obdurate materialist, silencing him and forcing him to accept it. Secondly, we shall allude to those 3 truths which are supposed to be far from the reason with a comparison which will bring them close to narrow minds. For example, if a state's army office is in the east of the country, its Ministry of Justice in the west, its Education Ministry in the north, its Religious Affairs Department in the south, and its Civil Service in the centre. And each department and ministry communicates and is connected with the others by means of radio, telephone and telegraph in most regular and orderly fashion. The whole country will quite simply be its army office, the same as it is its ministry office, and will be its learned establishment as it is its civil service. And for example, it sometimes happens that numerous countries and states whose capitals are different have sovereignty over a single country in different ways, through colonies or concessions or trade. Although the country's subjects and nation are one, through its concessions, each state has connections with them. The affairs of those states, which are distant from one another, touch on each other. They come close to each other in all the houses of the country, and they share in each of its people. Its minor matters are seen in a minor sphere in its points of contact. For each minor matter is not taken from the universal sphere. But when these minor matters are discussed, they are expressed as though they were taken from the universal sphere. Since they are directly in accordance with the universal sphere's laws, they are given the form of a matter discussed in that sphere. Thus, like these two comparisons, although the land of the heavens is extremely distant in respect of its centre and capital, it has immaterial telephones reaching the hearts of men in the land of the earth. Furthermore, it does not only look to the corporeal world, but since it comprises the spirit world and the world of the inner dimension of things, it, in one respect, encompasses the manifest world. The sphere of influence of paradise, too, which is from the world of eternity and everlasting realm, stretches out and spreads in luminous fashion beneath the veil of the manifest, despite its infinite distance. Just as, although through the wisdom and power of the all-wise and glorious Maker, the centres of the senses in man's head are all different, each governs the body, taking it under its disposal, so too the universe, the macroanthropos, comprises thousands of worlds, one within the other, like concentric circles. Sometimes the situations and events that occur in them are the object of attention in respect of their universality and particularity and insignificance and immensity. That is to say, those particulars are to be seen in particular, close places, while the universals and immense matters are seen in universal, vast stations. However, sometimes a minor, particular event occupies a vast world. In whichever corner of the world you listen, you will hear about it. And sometimes some vast mobilization is not against the enemy's forces, but to make a show of pomp and majesty. For example, the event of Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, and sacred occurrence of the revelation of the Quran were the most important events in the land of the heavens, being heard in every corner of it, as a dominical sign proclaiming the degree of splendour of the Quranic revelation, and its glittering sovereignty, and the degree of its truthfulness, which no doubt could penetrate, expressed and illustrated by the sentries posted on the distant, towering bastions of the vast heavens, raining down missiles to drive off and repulse the devils. At that time, there were more falling stars being cast down. The Quran of miraculous exposition interprets and proclaims that cosmic proclamation alluding to those heavenly signs. Yes, such a tremendous heavenly sign, and making the spying Satans, who could have been blown away at the puffing of an angel, do battle with the angels, was surely to show the majesty of the Quranic revelation's sovereignty. Also, this splendid exposition of the Quran and vast heavenly mobilization is to express not that the jinns and Satans possess some power which drove the inhabitants of the heavens to fight them and defend against them, but to indicate that on the long way from the heart of Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, to the world of the heavens, and the sublime throne. There was nowhere the jinns and devils could interfere. The Quranic revelation was a truth discussed by all the angels in the heavens. In order to draw close to it a little, the Satans were compelled to rise to the heavens, but were not successful and were repulsed. This shows that the revelation which came to the heart of Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, and Gabriel, who came to his presence, and the truths of the unseen, which appeared to his gaze, were sound and straight, and could be pierced by no doubts. The Quran of miraculous exposition gives news of this in miraculous fashion. As for paradise being seen from very close, despite its great distance, and being part of the world of eternity, and sometimes fruits being received from it, as may be understood from the above two comparisons, this transient world and manifest realm is a veil to the world of the unseen and everlasting realm. It is possible for paradise to be seen everywhere by means of the mirror of the world of similitudes, despite the distance of its supreme centre. So too, by means of belief at the degree of absolute certainty, paradise may have sorts of colonies and ministries in this transient world. Yet there is no mistake in the comparison, and by means of the telephone of the heart may communicate with elevated spirits, and its gifts may come to them. As for a universal sphere being preoccupied with a particular personal matter, that is to say, one aspect of the reality described in the Quranic commentaries are Satan's rising to the heavens and eavesdropping in order to bring reports of the unseen to soothsayers, and bringing false, confused news, it must be as follows. It is not a question of their going as far as the capital of the land of the heavens and gathering particular news. Rather, there are certain places in the country of the heavens which also encompasses the atmosphere, like police stations. The metaphor is not mistaken, which have relations with the country of the earth. The Satans eavesdrop on particular events in those particular places. The human heart even is one of those places, where the angel of inspiration and personal devil do battle. Also, however particular the truths of belief and the Quran and the events connected with Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, they are like the greatest and most universal and important events, and are published in the sublime throne and sphere of the heavens, the most universal sphere, in, if the comparison is not mistaken, the newspapers of the appointed events of the universe. These are discussed on every corner, and since from the heart of Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, to the sphere of the throne, there is no possibility to interfere. The Satans can do nothing apart from listening to the heavens. Thus, it proclaims and shows most eloquently, indeed miraculously, how elevated and true are the Quranic revelation and prophethood of Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, and that it is in no way possible